All right, so how to stop only chasing SEO positions and start becoming the recommended solution in AI answers. So AI search has changed how B2B buyers discover products. And so therefore, yesterday's SEO strategy is not optimal if you want to be recommended in AI answers. So what I intend to cover in this video is the clear differences between traditional search and SEO versus AI search, the 3 surface areas you need to own if you want a modern search strategy. So traditional SEO search typically covered 1 surface area. There are now 2 new surface areas to consider. And finally, the 4-step AEO playbook to earn citations. So quick TLDR on what's happening with search, really to set the frame for the next 30-40 minutes. So as I mentioned, how B2B buyers organically discover products and services is changing. And this is all down to the emergence of AI search. So some numbers here. 1 in 5 Google searches included an AI summary in March 2025, which is enabling what we call zero-click research. I'll talk in more detail about what zero-click research, what that means, and some of the implications. 48% of B2B buyers use AI search while evaluating vendors. This is a HubSpot 2024 report, so this number is probably higher today. And I think why it's important to flag this is because through conversations I've had with people, there seems to be this misconception that only consumers use AI assistants like ChatGPT, which is false. There's a 50% projected drop in traditional search by 2028 as users shift to AI assistants. So more people are going to be using ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, etc., rather than completing searches in search engines like Google and Bing. And the reason why is quite obvious, is because rather than searching some keywords and getting a random list of blue links, you can actually get personalized answers based on your unique situation, problems, and desires, which is just a far better user experience. And then probably best of all, visitors that come via AI search convert much higher. So on average, 3 to 4 times higher conversions. Ahrefs did a recent study where they found AI referred traffic converted 23 times higher than traditional traffic. And so I think, just to go into the details, and you can read the report yourself, I think AI traffic accounted for 0.5% of their website traffic, which is a very small number, but accounted for 12% of their total number of signups, which is just huge. And so there's a lot of reports and studies out there that you can look at. So the implication here is if you haven't considered this, if you haven't been keeping an eye on this, and if you haven't adapted your search strategy, then it's likely your company could be invisible to a rapidly growing segment of the market. And this is even if you've already been doing traditional SEO over the last several years. And so if this is your first time watching one of my videos on YouTube, just to give a bit of background, who the hell is this guy, this stranger talking about AEO? So I'm Liam. I'm the co-founder at Discovered Labs. We work with B2B SaaS companies to help them get discovered in AI assistants and overviews. I've worked with B2B SaaS companies over the last 5 to 6 years and have some testimonials and case studies from those engagements, which you could probably watch on my YouTube. So some notable ones: helped instantly grow to 20 million ARR in 3 years bootstrapped. Just a note on that, we stopped reporting their revenue maybe a few years ago, and so they're much larger than that today. It eventually gets to a point where you're talking about your revenue doesn't help you. We helped SEO Space grow from 3K to 50K MRR in 12 months, helped Flowsy add 1 million in 6 months, and a few other stories there. At Discovered Labs, I'm joined by my co-founder, Ben, who's an engineer and ex-Stanford AI researcher. And so when it comes to organic search, there really is this sort of maths and science side of it, how you structure the sentences, testing, reporting, research, etc. And then there's also that art side, which is, creating good content that's also readable for humans. And so that's where my demand generation experience comes into it. And so, as I said, you can watch those testimonials and case studies on our YouTube channel. But let's move on. And obviously, I do have a dog in this fight, right? We offer AI search optimization services, but this isn't just me shouting from my lawn about how important AI search optimization is. If you're in the B2B marketing space, go-to-market space, everybody is talking about this at the moment. And here's a visual by SEMrush, essentially projecting that visitors from AI assistants or LLMs, including Google AI overviews, is eventually going to outperform traditional organic search. And so we're still in the first innings right here. The playbook is still being developed, and hence why I create this content, because I truly believe if you can jump in now, it's going to be scrappy. We're still figuring things out. But if you can just ride the momentum, you're going to be in a really good place before everyone else figures it out. And so let's bring this down into the sort of the micro. So user behavior is shifting towards AI answers and assistants. And so if we look at here, traditional search versus AI search. So in traditional search, users search a short query, a few keywords, usually anywhere between sort of 3 to 7 keywords they search. You're then presented with a list of blue links, also known as the SERP. And then as a buyer or a consumer, you then click around these links and conduct research. Really, that is what we've known to be search for the last decade or 20 years, and SEO being the role of optimizing that. With AI search, over here on the right, users are having conversations. So already there's a much longer tail here. There's a lot of context, a lot of constraints. The AI then goes away and does its thing. And we're going to get into the specifics about what it actually does there. So the AI goes away, conducts web search. It then synthesizes all of the information it finds from various sources. It filters those sources based on various signals, and then it returns with a personalized answer or summary to the user, which is a very, very different experience, a much better experience for users. Here you can see very conversational nature of these LLMs. I'm an agency founder. These are my company size. I'm looking for these solutions. This is my tech stack. These are the constraints I have, pricing, budget, etc. And then the AI is going away and doing its thing and giving me a personalized recommendation. This is a much better experience than just being presented with, a list of random blue links where I then have to go do the work. And I'll get into the specifics about this throughout the video. So search is moving from these short queries to conversations, and it's moving from these list of random blue links to personalized answers based on the user's context and situation. And so if you're not retrievable, if you're not citable, and if you're not trusted by these AI models, then it's likely that your narrative in these AI answers is being controlled by someone else at this critical moment of consideration, because these AI models have to get the information from somewhere, right? And if they're not getting it from you, then it's likely that they're getting it from a third party, possibly even your competitors, who aren't incentivized to position you in the best light. And the thing to consider about these AI answers is that they carry far more weight than just a list of random blue links on page 1 of Google, because of that personalization element, right? This is almost like asking your friend for a referral, like, hey, I'm looking for a tool that does this, or really struggling with this. I'm looking for an agency that does this. Do you know anyone? And your friend comes back and says, yeah, actually, I've heard good things about this company. You should reach out to them. You put a lot more trust in that recommendation than just, a random agency or software on LinkedIn. And we're seeing similar effects in AI answers, because you're given that upfront context about your unique situation. There's that memory component. These models have build a knowledge graph about you. And so the answers they give you are personalized to your situation, to your constraints, to your needs, rather than a list of random blue links. And so, the big question that everyone's asking at the moment is, isn't this just SEO? And we have a strong opinion on this. It's loosely held, always willing to change our opinion, but we think a distinction is important here. And I'll go into, the core idea of this video is to go into why. And so the primary goal of AI search is to win selection. It's to become the recommended choice in AI answers. It's not just to rank on a random list of blue links in the SERP, right? So look at some of the key differences. Traditional SEO, We're chasing clicks from a ranked link. In AI answers, we're chasing, mentions and citations inside personalized answers. In traditional SEO, we're trying to rank entire pages. In AI answers, we're trying to have short extractable passages. In traditional SEO, the winning asset is a 2,000, 3,000 word post. In AI answers, it's a 40 to 80 word answer block with structured information. In traditional SEO, we're chasing impressions, clicks, and SERP positions. In AI answers, some of the leading metrics are mention rate, citation rate, and share of voice. So how often you're being mentioned, how often you're being cited, and the frequency in which you appear relative to your competitors. Traditional SEO has really had this reputation of being low intent, a lot of informational, how-to articles that have low conversion rates. Whereas in AI answers, it has high intent because the answers are personalized to that user's unique situation. So you can kind of imagine it loosely as a sales rep, right? These AI answers ideally are positioning your company against competitors. They're mapping your company to buyers' problems. And so by the time somebody does click through to your website, they're really primed, in comparison to just reading an information article. Now, one thing you'll never hear us say is that SEO is being replaced or SEO is being killed. We do not believe that. Google, Bing, these search engines are not going anywhere. Either is traditional search. It's still the 500-pound gorilla. And overlap does exist, right? Technical SEO is still table stakes because now we're optimizing for machines and agents. And so all of that needs to be in order, and I'll get into more detail about that. Ultimately, we're still creating high quality content that is being indexed by search engines. We're still optimizing for positive brand associations, but the strategy, measurement, and outputs for answer engine optimization, AEO, are different. And so that's why we think distinction is needed. Now, the biggest reason why we think distinction is needed is because you can have perfect SEO. You could be doing SEO for the last several years, 10 years, 20 years, and you could still not be outperforming your competitors in AI answers who maybe didn't have as much of an SEO strategy. And so I think before we compare some of the tactical differences between traditional SEO and AEO, well, first, I think we need to actually define what SEO is from somewhat first principles, right? So a web page is a document which consists of text, images, and code, and that lives at a URL, right? So web pages are your articles or, secondary pages. We then have search engines that send crawlers to discover these pages, read them, and store what they learn in a giant index. Your title tag, the headings, and internal links in your content help understand how everything connects, internal links to various other pages. This is how these crawlers map your content and understand what it's about. And so then when a consumer or a buyer searches, these search engines, they consult the index and they return an ordered list of results, right? That's the SERP. That's that random 10 blue links, not random, but those 10 blue links that we're seeing when somebody searches on Google. And so those pages are ranked by how well they seem to answer the query, known as relevance, how trustworthy they appear, so authority, which is often in the context of SEO inferred by backlinks, and how good the experience is on those web pages. So things like speed, mobile optimization, etc. Right? That's really the game of traditional search that we've known over the last 10 to 20 years. And so search engine optimization is the craft of optimizing all of this, right? It's the craft of helping search engines find, understand, and trust your pages so that you show up higher on this list, right? And so typically how that manifests is technical SEO, on-page SEO, which is content, and off-page SEO, which is backlinks, okay? That has been the game of SEO over the last 10 to 20 years. Now, with the emergence of AI search, we're not dealing with that anymore. We're dealing with a completely different beast. We're dealing with generative and intelligent systems, okay? And how they find, synthesize, and prioritize information on the web is completely different to what we've known over the last 10, 20 years, right? And so if traditional SEO was built over how search engines or how users have found and searched information over the last 10 to 20 years, if SEO was built around that, and now all of that is changing, then it's no longer fit for purpose in the AI era. And so that's why we think there needs to be a distinction, because SEO is focused on all of this stuff, whereas AEO is focused on these generative systems and optimizing for that. Right. So let's go into some of the details about some of the differences between traditional and these generative systems, right? So how generative information retrieval differs from classic information retrieval, right? So we're going to get a bit nerdy here over the next 10 minutes, all right? So we're going to refer to information retrieval as IR, right? And information retrieval is that process of retrieving information. So the first error, so we're going from single query and a ranked list of pages in the SERP to one question and lots of mini searches, right? So classic search takes your query and returns a single ranked list of pages in the SERP, right? As we showed earlier, we've got the user query, and then we've got the ranked list of pages in the SERP. Generative systems, they take that query, or also known as your prompt, and then what they do from there is they don't just use it verbatim to conduct web searches, is they transform that user query into dozens of subqueries. And this process is called query fan out, right? And these queries consist of, filters, operators, and variations to make the searches very, very targeted. And so they're searching the web, and then they're bringing back the best snippets, so, passages of text, not entire pages, from multiple places, and then they're merging them together in one answer, right? And so as part of this, I'm going to give some, examples and analogies to really hit this home. So this is the difference between going into a library and asking a librarian, hey, I want to learn this topic. Could you recommend your top 5 books on this topic, right? Very similar to, putting in a query and being presented with the top 5 or 10 links, right? Traditional search. Versus asking a team of research analysts saying, hey, I want to learn this topic, but I want you to go out. I want you to scan all these various sources, whether it be books, whether it be YouTube, whether it be Wikipedia, whether it be research papers. I then want you to pull the relevant paragraphs or passages from all these various sources. And then I want you to write me a summary of all the best information, right? Very, very different to traditional search. And so the implication here is you don't want to just optimize for one keyword or page. You don't want to just optimize for ranking position 1 for a keyword. You want to make sure that many different phrasings and angles that are coming from this query fan out process can still pick up reliable, quotable facts about you, right? So to kind of visualize this query fan out process in a simplified way. And so you can see this this prompt at the top. Again, I'm persona. This is my budget. This is my team size. These are all my constraints. This is my tech stack. Very different nature to searching for keywords in Google. And so you can see how the model is reasoning here. And you can see highlighted in red some of the web searches that it's doing. Now, it doesn't expose the actual query to us here, but you can see that it's researching Facebook ads, analytics solutions, and pricing. So here it's probably going to use some, Booleans and constraints, very, very highly targeted web searches. And so it doesn't matter if you're on page 1 here, right? It just matters if you have the right information. Verifying pricing details for certain vendors, searching agency analytics pricing for unlimited users, verifying pricing and integrations for analytics tools. And here you can see here it's reasoning with itself. It's saying, fit within the budget. Now I need to check agency analytics and confirm their pricing, right? So it's conducting all of this web search based on my constraints, and it's reasoning with itself to ensure that it's getting the right information, because these models just care about creating a great user experience, right? And how that manifests is factual, relevant, and recent information that the user wants, all right? So that's the first difference between traditional information retrieval and generative information retrieval, how these agents are conducting these web searches. The second reason is we're going from ranking whole pages to quoting specific passages. Okay, so in classic search, decides which pages should rank, whereas generative systems, they decide which passages, which are just small chunks of text, are most useful that they can relay back to the user, right? So if your page hides the key details in a wall of text or prose or in an image, nice graphics, then you're going to be ignored, okay? Because these agents are machines, they're just looking at your website as raw HTML, right? And so they're looking for those facts, they're looking for those passages. And so if that those facts and information is spread across 2,000 words, and you're just making life difficult for them, and they're not going to cite you. And so the best way to think about this is thinking in the sense of information dense index cards and not novels, right? So if you're like studying for an exam or a topic, you go out there, you do your research, watching videos, reading books, and then you take all of the key facts and the important information and you put them onto index cards that you study, right? That's what we're optimizing for here, is how can we take all the important information and facts and condense it into our content, rather than spreading it across and with all this filler text that these agents don't care for. And so the implication here is we're optimizing for passages, not entire pages. And so this means how you structure your content must be considered, right? If these agents are quoting 40 to 80 word passages, well then what needs to be in those passages for it to be optimized for them? And so that how that manifests is your content style and strategy. And so we need to ensure claims can stand alone and are machine readable, for example, in HTML, not screenshots. And so here's an example here, which I think shows this quite well, is I asked for the top B2B analytics platforms for agencies running Facebook ads. And then the second vendor it recommended here is it cited this comment from Reddit, right? And so note here, I clicked through to this Reddit post. I had to scroll 50% down the page to find this comment that is cited. And note how within this comment, there are no links. They're not linking out. There's no backlink to dash this, which is the vendor. This is just natural language, which appears to be an authentic message by a user. Whether it is or not, that's a whole different question. And it doesn't even have that many upvotes, right? And so really this is the game that's happening here, as these models are conducting this web search. Okay, this user is asking for this solution. Here are their constraints. They go out and conduct a web search, and then they're finding just these small passages of information that they use to then provide a personalized answer back to the user, right? In SEO, we have not been optimizing for this. Get out of this. Thirdly, we're going from fixed positions to personalized pick lists. And this is a big one. This is really where I think smaller companies relative to incumbents really have an opportunity to win here. Because SEO has all been about these incumbents that have just owned position 1 and position 2, and you would just never be able to compete with them. Where with AI answers, you can. So in classic SEO, we're chasing stable page positions, trying to get position 1, position 2, position 3 for certain keywords. Whereas in generative systems, they produce different answers for different people based on their context, prior questions, and constraints, right? There isn't a single spot to hold. You could be so let's say you have two users. We have user A, user B. User A might, and user B, they might have a very similar prompt, but there's small tweaks. User A has a bigger budget. Maybe they have 2 million in revenue and user B only has 500K, but they're both looking for B2B analytics solutions, right? With generative systems, within AI search, the answer that both of those users get could be completely different because they have different constraints. They have different situations. One might be an agency, might be a SaaS founder. In SEO, this has never been considered. Both of those users would get the same list of 10 blue links, regardless of their budget, regardless of their situation or their industry or their constraints. With AI search, it's very, very different, right? And so what that means is you can, even if you're a smaller company with lower domain authority, you can become that recommended solution if you're optimizing for AI search, because there is no single spot to hold. This is all very fluid, right? So there's no longer this podium that any individual company can just hold forever, right? Which we've seen over the last 10, 20 years, because these AI answers, they're tailored shortlists and they're always changing. And so the implication here is stop obsessing over this, these universal ranks, and understand how you're appearing in these AI answers. So track whether you appear and how you're described across different personas and prompt chains, because it's going to change. You might be rank 1 for agency founders, but do terribly for SaaS founders, just as way of an example. And so you want to measure your visibility, your citations, and sentiment, not just clicks, right? Because clicks as a metric are changing. And the best way to explain this is, back to the librarian example, is if I had a team of research analysts who went out there and researched and summarized all the key bits of information back to me on a topic, I no longer have the justification or the motivation to go open these books, right? So the books in this sense, opening the book is a click here, right? If these agents are going out there, doing the research and then providing a personalized answer back to me, well, then there's really less reason for me to click through to those websites because I now have the answer. The job has been done. Now, of course, if I want to go through and convert, then I'm going to have to click through the website and book a call or start a trial and all that kind of stuff. But the impact here is we're seeing that clicks are being reduced. Now, that clicks are still powerful, but there's something happening earlier in the buyer's journey here, right? With traditional SEO, the first success metric we're looking at is page views. How many, so you're ranked on the SERP, but how many people are clicking through to your page? And really that's where like the SEO funnel starts. With AI search, you could be influencing decision-making and consideration, but you might not see the clicks in your attribution software. Now, that doesn't mean an impact isn't happening. You're still communicating your narrative. And so that's why these leading metrics, like understanding how you're appearing in these answers, how you're being framed, what sources of information are being cited, what's the general sentiment. We need to understand those leading metrics to understand how you're influencing decision-making, right? So you might not be getting any clicks, but brand recall is still happening. You're still being competitively positioned. And the huge thing about these AI assistants is this memory component, right? So here's a screenshot on ChatGPT where I've blurred out a lot, but it knows my age. It knows I'm interested in learning certain topics. And so they build this knowledge graph over time so that these answers only get more personalized over time, right? So these agents are doing their thing. They're conducting web search. They're filtering based on whether those sources of information are trusted. But in those last few steps of reasoning, I'm oversimplifying it here, is they're then asking, okay, well, is this answer personalized to Liam? Sure, it might be personalized to that person ABC, but based on this memory I have of Liam, is this answer personalized? And then they're switching the order. Maybe vendor one is actually vendor two now because based on my unique situation. We have not seen this happen with traditional SEO. We've just been hit with a generic list of 10 blue links. And so, the implication here is it doesn't matter if you're position one on the SERP. It just matters if you have the right information for this user, right? And we can even see here on the right as part of that reasoning flow, it's like, it's saying to itself, however, since the user specifically asked for a solution focused on Facebook ad strategy analytics, I'll need to consider other tools more tailored for that, right? So I think it looked at this vendor and maybe decided based on my prompt, it wasn't good. And so it disqualified it, right? We're not seeing that level of intelligence in traditional search. And then fourth, we're going from backlinks as the primary mechanism as authority in traditional search to cross-source agreement or corroboration in AI search, right? So classic SEO leaned heavily on backlinks to your site. Really, the whole strategy of SEO agencies was to get you on, do some PR, but really the main bulk, the 80-20, was getting you into sort of sponsored listicles or, maybe even private networks and stuff like that if they wanted to be a bit grey hat. Whereas with generative systems, they're looking for agreement across multiple trusted places. So review platforms, directories, press, docs, communities, even Wikipedia. And so when deciding whether to cite your information or not, if multiple or several third parties say the same thing about your company, whether it be the pricing, the positioning, the differentiators, the product, but your site says something else, the model is going to trust the consensus, right? And so with traditional SEO, the game has really been about, positioning your company. All our competitors are crap. Our product is great. That's no longer going to cut it in AI search. It really matters more what the consensus says about your company. And so you need to consider that extended third-party surface area. And so imagine your website is your resume where, you say all these good things about yourself, and that was okay in the SEO strategy, with a traditional SEO strategy. In AEO, what's happening is these models are essentially, calling up your references to corroborate your claims. Okay, just as a way of an example here to simplify it. So it doesn't matter how great you are on your own website. It matters what other people are saying about you as well. And you want all of that to be consistent, because otherwise it's going to cause you some problems. And so the implication here is you want to govern your facts across the web, make sure your pricing, features, integrations, positioning match on review sites, even places like Product Hunt, partner marketplaces, docs, and your site. Because if there's any inconsistency, then it's going to cause you a problem. And, consistency is one thing, but also sentiment. Are people saying good things? Are they saying bad things? Is your company trustworthy? This is going far beyond backlinks. And just an example here to hit this home. And, this isn't the end of the world, but it's a good example of how that inconsistency can impact you. So this company here, on their H1, on their homepage, one of the value propositions is that you can search over 100 million ad ideas. So this product is essentially a swipe file for ads. But when I asked about this company in Perplexity, it told me that you could only browse 500,000 ads. And the reason why, because I did some research, is because on their Product Hunt profile, it says browse 500k ads. And so they've obviously forgotten to update this. I think this information is maybe a couple of years old. And so even though they're saying this on their own website, these AI models are choosing that, they're going with the consensus of what other people are saying about this company, right? So you need to consider that extended surface area of how you're positioning your company in all these various places, because the worst thing that can happen is, you're being misrepresented in these AI answers. Because a lot of buyers, they're not going to go investigate. They're not going to be like me and go, oh, I wonder why that's happening. I'm going to go to their Product Hunt profile, right? Buyers are not going to do that. They're just going to take the information at face value. And so, this isn't necessarily the end of the world, but imagine if this was related to pricing. It was old pricing, or maybe features that have been released but aren't being represented in AI answers, and that's going to affect your competitive position and ranking, right? That's kind of what happens if this isn't looked after. And so a search optimization strategy is no longer just getting a page to rank for one keyword. It's making sure your facts can be pulled across many mini searches, that query fan out process, for different varying personas with different varying intent levels, and also confirmed by multiple sources in any format, right? So the kind of surface area we now need to consider has increased massively. And so a winning search strategy in 2025 and beyond combines all of these surface areas. And we view these as three primary surface areas. So the first one is being discoverable via web search by both humans and now agents. And so traditional SEO has always just considered the human part. How can we be on page one, position two, when humans search, head terms, or maybe even, shortish tail keywords in the SERP. Whereas now we have two new surface areas. So the second one is optimized for citations, so having rich, verifiable, and consistent facts corroborated by others. And then thirdly, secured in the training data. So this is where we get your most important facts baked into the actual model itself. And so they already know about your company without doing the web search. So future versions of the models know your company, right? This is great defensibility. This is the long-term game you want to play, that we do for clients. So two new surface areas, right? We're moving away from just optimizing for humans searching keywords and being the SERP, to now citations and being secured in the long-term training data, right? So I said this before, we don't think an AI search strategy replaces SEO. It's just a new work stream that sits under organic search and considers the new surface areas, right? And if done well, an AI search strategy should still dominate the SERP. And we've seen this. Some of the clients we work with, our main objective is getting them more AI referred customers and trials, or whatever the business model is. And we've seen in many cases that even though we're optimizing for that, our content and our work still outperforms their SEO agency or their SEO team's content. We're still getting more organic traffic. We're still ranking higher in the SERP. We're still getting more impressions and clicks, despite us optimizing for AI search rather than traditional SEO, right? So if done well, you should be tackling all of these surface areas. It's, ultimately as a company, depending on who's watching this, you don't want all these different line items, right? Ultimately, you just want more organic leads and customers. And so ideally, somebody's going to be owning all of this. But the issue is that most SEO agencies and teams, they're still just continuing as normal without adapting the strategy and considering these different surface areas. And the reason they're doing this is because the content that they've created over the last few years or several years is being cited by AI models. And so they just assume, well, SEO is the same as AEO. Our content's being cited. I guess we're doing something right. And I personally believe, I'm willing to change my opinion on this, but I personally believe this to be a dangerous fallacy, which is going to cost companies growth, right? And so just to give an example here is you could be winning with Facebook ads. Maybe you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a month and your ads are absolutely crushing it, really profitable. You could take those Facebook ads and launch them on as LinkedIn ads, and I guarantee you're going to get impressions, you're going to get clicks, you're going to get conversions. But does that mean that will be the most optimal strategy for LinkedIn? No, it won't. And I guarantee it won't work as well, because I've done both of those. And LinkedIn requires a different strategy to Facebook. So just because you're getting clicks and impressions and conversions doesn't mean it's the most optimal strategy, right? Each channel has its own considerations. And so what operates successfully at scale, I'm talking at scale here, on one channel won't automatically translate to a winning strategy on a different channel. So you really need to consider these new surface areas if you haven't been already. And so the big question for people is, how can you make sure AI assistants like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, etc., consistently recommend your company to potential buyers, right? So what content should you create and where, so that AI models cite you as a source? How do you adapt your current SEO content and tactics for AI's answer selection criteria? And how do you track progress and iterate across different AI platforms to stay ahead? So the 4-step AEO playbook that we execute on behalf of clients is 1, answer modeling. So we see where you're named, how you're framed, and which sources models trust. 2, technical excellence. This is very unsexy. Everybody of course just wants the customers and the revenue, but because we're optimizing for machines and agents here, having your technical foundations in order is just non-negotiable, right? Because we're optimizing for agent retrieval and understanding. So this is kind of the normal technical SEO that we've been doing already, plus that third-party consistency that always tends to fall through the gaps. Content operations, so running a content engine that produces fresh, problem-focused, citation-worthy material consistently. So at Discovered, for our clients, we ship on average between 1 to 3 content units daily to answer ICP's questions, as well as we manage the end-to-end process of original research using the client's first-party data to gain an edge, to actually just outcompete their competitors on a content front, but also to get into that training data to get long-term defensibility. I'm going to explain that in more detail. And then finally, trust engineering. So digital PR still works. I wouldn't ever tell a client, you need to stop getting backlinks. You need to stop, PR of your company. However, with AI search specifically, and that's really what my content is focused on, the real edge is gained through seeing authentic discussions and mentions in high trust platforms. As we saw in that example earlier, that passage that was taken from Reddit, stuff like that really, really matters in AI search optimization. Now, I do think people are over-indexing on Reddit. There's a lot of, I think a lot of people have launched, Reddit agencies and Reddit software, and so they're kind of trying to communicate to the market that Reddit is all that matters. I don't believe that to be true. They're, in terms of priority, these AI models prioritize other platforms first, but before Reddit. And so the core question we're asking ourselves when we work with B2B SaaS companies is, what must exist so agents can confidently cite our client in the exact scenarios that their ICP is asking about? And so breaking this down, so answer modeling, we're going from that keyword list, keyword research in traditional SEO to now what we call the prompt universe. So think of your company's prompt universe as all the ways buyers could discover you through AI models. So we're listing out all the questions and prompts a potential buyer might ask an AI where your product should ideally be recommended. So we're thinking beyond keywords here, we're thinking beyond head terms, thinking of that conversational nature that people are having with these models. You can pull these from sales calls, support conversations, communities, reviews, and deep research to use the actual language that your customers use. How we do this for clients is we have internal software. So we do this across several hundred queries per client. That varies across different intent levels. So people who are just searching for information versus, comparing our clients against their competitors, as well as persona types as well. Because we want to be the top of the list for everything, for every query, for every persona across all the different intent levels. And so I launched this graphic recently on LinkedIn just to help visualize this. So just like a simple way of looking at the different funnel stages. So people exploring, right? So asking these sort of questions to evaluating to deciding, right? So you want to consider all of that. We do this across several hundred queries. There is software out there that will help you do this. So you can use these AI visibility products that are going to help you test your prompt universe across multiple models. And you do want to do it across multiple models because you might be killing it in ChatGPT, for example, but not doing so well in Gemini or Claude, right? All of these models, they're different companies, they're different platforms. And so they all have their different considerations under the hood. So you need to consider when you're doing this, if you're doing it yourself, you need to consider all the factors at play here, such as session memory. You know, if you're just doing this in your own ChatGPT instance, which has all that built up memory of you as an individual, and let's say you're an agency founder and you're trying to understand how you'll appear in for SaaS founders, well, you know, it's just an unfair experiment, right? Because the knowledge graph built on you as an agency founder isn't going to give a true representation of the answers delivered to a SaaS founder. You want to log where you're mentioned, cited, the source of citations and where competitors were, but you were not. And you want to pay attention to the differences, right? Again, one AI model might put you at rank 1. The information might have great depth. You might be really well positioned against competitors, but then in another AI model, it might not be the same, right? So again, this is some internal software we have that does this on behalf of clients. Technical foundations and consistency then. So again, table stakes, not sexy, but really, really important in an era where we're optimizing for machines to retrieve and understand and trust information. So just some high level pointers here. So you want to develop what we call a set of facts. So this is a regularly updated source of truth across your product, pricing, category, your differentiators, what makes you unique, that you can propagate across that extended third-party surface area to ensure that consistency. You want to improve your website schema, something that, ideally you've been doing already, especially if you have an SEO strategy, but, it does tend to get put on the back burner because it's not sexy, but really, really important, like non-negotiable for agents to understand information. Again, I think website schema is one of those things where, you see content on LinkedIn and people are basically saying that this is all you need to do to rank in LLMs. Don't believe that to be true. Absolute table stakes, but also non-negotiable. That an AI search strategy is so much more than just, having website schema. You also want to recheck your crawlability. So bad crawl paths, poor URL hygiene, and canonicals can impede agents. You can just make their life difficult, and so therefore they'll just cite information elsewhere, right? And so this stuff does creep up on you. We recently onboarded a B2B SaaS company who has a mature SEO strategy. They're getting a lot of traffic. However, when we conducted a technical audit, we found hundreds of bad URLs, 404s, just poor URL hygiene, canonicals hadn't been managed. And so we're just we're just impeding agents, which is just going to cause you some harm. And of course, I showed you the example of what happens when you don't have that consistent set of facts across the web. Content operations then. So this is obviously the main bulk of things. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to produce high quality content that consists of short quotable units. So answers, specs, tables, comparisons designed for passage level retrieval, not just 200 word essays of prose, right? So what we're doing here is we're aligning the topics that we post about with that prompt universe, that answer modeling that we've done. And personally, internally, we combine it with keyword research as a demand proxy because, of course, platforms like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, they don't yet expose impression data. They don't tell you, hey, 1 million people are searching for these prompts. Google does that with traditional SEO because they have an advertising model, and so they have to do that. Whereas the AI models don't, and so they don't have to do that. And so we use keyword research as a demand proxy. It's not 100% accurate because, of course, this entire model has been built off short keywords, whereas the conversational nature could be 10, 15, 20, 30 words. We believe it's possible to have a high throughput of content without shipping AI slop, right? Really, this is one of the key ways we stand out is we ship, multiple, sometimes several pieces of content daily across every single client. And so if you compound that over time against competitors who are only shipping 10, 15 articles a month, and it's high quality content, you're just out competing them. And so one of our viewpoints here is that we believe this traditional SEO agency model is just ripe for disruption. I think in the AI search era, it's just you cannot get away with shipping 10 to 15 average articles per month and charging, $5, $6, $8, $10,000 a month for it as well. It's just absolutely ripe for disruption. And so our 10-step process that we use here, it forces source-backed claims, really, really important for agents so that they can verify your information, multimedia assets, bringing in YouTube videos, product screenshots, other screenshots, etc. Retrieval-friendly structure, so these models can actually interpret the information, and real user commentary. Also really important for backing up claims, right? If you're saying something about your competitor or your product, you need to be able to back that up. You can't just make these biased claims, right? We need that corroboration. And so our content workflow looks a little like this. So we bring in all these data points, feedback. We generate content brief. We then go away and conduct research, just as that team of research analysts would. What are your assumptions? What topic do you want to talk about? You need to go out there and learn that topic. We then analyze the SERP and the intent of current piece of content. We do the first draft, first review, draft 2. We then fact check. This is really important. Draft 3. We then have the final content. This is where we're asking ourselves, is this the most optimal piece of content for LLMs? We have an internal rubric to score that. Is it in the tone of voice of the author? Is it aligned with the company's brand guidelines? Basically, is this the best piece of content that we can publish? And then after then, so we're now at step 9. On the 10th step, it's then human QA and editing. So we don't publish anything without it going past a human. And if it wasn't obvious already, a lot of this is internal workflows using AI and automation. And I think one of the benefits of Ben and I being outsiders to SEO is we don't have this sort of this baggage, these limiting beliefs. I think there's this sort of sentiment that AI is the devil and you shouldn't use AI to create content. I would just challenge that and say that you just don't have the workflow. You just don't have the right workflow. Yes, you shouldn't just be doing this in a ChatGPT project. You can, but you're not going to create high quality project content. We're not using NAN flows. We're not using Zapier. This is all custom, commercial grade software that we're using internally. We're not using external tools. And just to scroll down here, it's high quality content, right? So here's originality.ai, which is an AI checker. I don't think these are the gospel truth. These are just a signal. Take it with a pinch of salt. But here's one of our recent pieces of content that scored a 99% likely original score. And we took the most recent article from an SEO agency that's also working with this client, and they scored 52% likely AI, right? So, from my experience, most SEO agencies and teams are using tools to write their content, and those tools use AI. And so I think this notion of AI is bad for content generation is just false. It's just you need the right workflow. And I truly believe with the right workflow, you can not just match, but you can exceed human level content. And really the proof is in the pudding, right? This is one signal. Another signal is we've worked alongside SEO agencies, and our content has outperformed them on every conceivable metric, both AI search, mention rate, citation rate, share of voice, and traditional SEO metrics like impressions, clicks, rank positions, etc. Right? And so we manage everything inside Notion. Doesn't have to be done that way, but just to give you some visibility. Okay, then trust engineering. So as mentioned before, you don't become citable. You're not going to get cited by these AI models by just being that company that's, on their own lawn, shouting how good they are. It really comes down to corroboration, that extended third-party surface area. What are other people or publications saying about your company? And not necessarily in the way that we've understood in SEO with, listicles and backlinks, but natural language. So considering things like forums, even industry newsletters that can get scraped and indexed, academic standard bodies, comparative teardowns. And so broadly, two things we're thinking about here. So seeding those authentic discussions in those places where these models trust versus just that old way of sponsoring listicle articles. It's like I showed you the Reddit conversation earlier, but as part of what we do with clients is also doing those posts and seeding those comments and trying to control the narrative. So like here's an example, a redacted example of that happening. But then also thinking about original data. So these LLMs want novel information. They want novel facts, again, because they're optimizing for that good user experience. And part of that is providing relevant, factual, fresh information. So we manage that end to end. So we come up with the idea, we'll pitch the client, we'll analyze their first party data, we'll create the content, we'll package it, and then work with creators and influencers if relevant to distribute that as well. And so you're feeding these models fresh information that's going to get you into the training data long term. But you're also, if it's good content, and it should be, you're attracting those signals back to you through mentions, co-mentions, backlinks, etc. So really, we're trying to play three games here: agent retrieval, citable content, and training data. And when I talked about earlier that answer modeling we do, a critical part of that is we scrape all of the answers, and that helps us understand what sources of information are being cited. So we've got company-owned sources. So these are sources of information, maybe piece of content that you own and are being cited. And so the activities here are, how can we squeeze that for more juice? How can we improve that content? How can we make it, how can we allow agents to find pieces of information better? Could we restructure the sentences, the headings? Is the website schema in a good place? Are the technical foundations in place? That's the sort of activities we're focusing on there. Company earned, so sort of third-party sources of earned mentions. A massive thing here is ensuring that the information is up to date. We're still being competitively positioned, especially if these sources of information are over 1 year old, which is very common. In B2B SaaS, new features are being shipped every week. Pricing for some companies is changing, 2-3 times a year. And so just going back and ensuring all of that information is up to date. And also we have that consistency, our differentiators are being communicated, pricing, etc. Why are you different to competitors? So going back, we manage that, identifying them, reaching out to them and managing the whole process. We then have competitor earned sources. So perhaps places where competitors are being mentioned, but you are not. So the objective there is to get co-mentions or to displace competitors. And then competitor-owned sources, that's looking at, okay, well, why is that happening? Reverse engineering. What's the intent behind their content? What's the format? What's the type? Can we recreate that and outperform them? And also, who is citing or linking back to their content? Can we displace them there as well? So the best thing about this of AI search, as I showed that chart at the very, very beginning, we're really still in like the first innings of AI search. And this is what gets us excited, right? It's early days. This is definitely not a fad. All you need to do is look at the AI platforms like OpenAI and Anthropic. I think OpenAI's latest valuation is somewhere around 500 billion. These are huge companies. And then we also have the incumbents, the trillion-dollar companies that are also trying to win here. Everyone is trying to win. And I think a lot of companies see this as a matter of survival. And so for us mere consumer mortals, that means a lot of this is being subsidized for us because a lot of these companies aren't right now optimizing for profit. And I truly believe, if you can just ride the wave, if you can just get in a boat, let the tide take you, I think you're going to end up in a good destination. And most companies have still not fully adjusted to this yet, right? They're still just going on as normal with their normal SEO strategy. And so I think there's this opportunity to secure first mover advantage. There's that, but also just the different considerations of how AI search works. Fixed positions are no longer a thing, right? So you've got those 500-pound gorillas that have just dominated position 1, position 2 for the last decade, right? They're really being disrupted here. And so there's this disproportionate upside for companies that are willing to take a bet on this. And so finally here, so how we typically work with clients, just a generic roadmap for the first 90 days. The top level thing here to understand is that by day 5, we're shipping high quality content. So we don't believe in this, taking 4 to 6 weeks to do research and onboard clients. We've built the back end in a way that allows us to ship high quality content on day 5. Now, might not be perfect. It might need some tweaks. Maybe the tone of voice needs to be changed or whatever. That's completely natural, but we're definitely not going to be dragging you along for a 4 to 6 week onboarding period. So days 1 to 5 at a high level, full AI visibility audit, and then doing all the technical stuff, ensuring that on-page schema is good, making sure your EEAT is in place, which does matter for authority signals. Some of this stuff is just classic SEO stuff, but that people have just kind of forgotten about over time. So making sure that's all in a good place: schema, sitemaps, crawlability, URL hygiene, all that good stuff. Third-party profile, ensuring entity consistency across them, really low-hanging fruit. We create what we call company artifacts from research. So this is in the context of AI, how we manage context engineering. So, who are your target personas? What do they care about? What are their problems? And how can we map content to those problems? How do we map you as the solution to those problems? How do we write in your tone of voice? How do we do that for all the different authors that you might have? How do we align with your brand guidelines? All of that stuff we're doing in the first 5 days, and nothing gets shipped without your approval. And then within those first 5 days, also planning the content roadmap. From day 5 to sort of 60-ish, daily content, well-researched, high-quality, well-structured, LLM optimized. Another sort of work stream we do is what we call basically secondary pages, like comparison pages, integration pages, use cases, glossary. The scope of this really depends on your current situation, but we view these as separate to say just articles. These are really important for mapping those relationships, because if we go back to how people are behaving with these models, they're having conversations, they're putting a lot of constraints and upfront context, i.e. I'm using this tech stack and these are my constraints. And so when these models are going out searching for information, we want to be there to meet them and provide that information to control the narrative. Seeding community mentions, as I mentioned earlier, and managing all the outreach end-to-end to third-party websites for citation opportunities. If we need to create the content for those citations, we'll do that as well as the ongoing measurement and refresh cadence of historical content, because freshness is a big signal. From sort of day 60 and beyond then, what we try to do at least once per quarter is original research. So as I mentioned, we manage this all end-to-end. We'll pitch the idea to you. We'll analyze your data. We'll turn that into good content. We'll reach out to creators and influencers for co-distribution. We'll also, we manage thought leadership activation as well, because this is important for authority signals. These models are thinking in simple terms, who is this author? Who is this company? Why should we trust their information? And so thought leadership is still very much important. And so we view ourselves as outsourced organic. So we can either work in a separate work stream, separate to SEO, and with the core objective of getting you AI referred customers, or we can own SEO and AEO just under the umbrella of organic. Again, really depends on your current situation and what you're trying to optimize for. And so within 90 days, you're going to see higher citation rates in AI answers, broader prompt coverage, and rising share of voice in AI referred customers. Truthfully, with the clients we're working within at the moment, within 72 hours, we're getting citations in AI answers. And so again, something different to like SEO is we found the sort of cycle to be much faster in AI search. Okay, and that's it. So if you watch this far, I appreciate your time and spending it with me. If you're a B2B SaaS company and you want an AI search visibility audit for completely free, just go to the website, book a call, and you'll probably speak with me. Cheers.